Let's get to Steve Leisman this morning with a closer look at the math behind these new tariffs. You've been busy this morning, Steve.
Yeah, I have a little reporter's notebook here that I think all you former reporters, anchors on the desk there would appreciate. We're sitting there on the desk last night. President Trump says we're charging people half of what they charge us. He puts up that now, I'm going to say, famous poster board, and I'm looking at those tariffs. I'm like, wait a second. I don't know the tariffs like an encyclopedia, but I'm pretty sure European tariffs are not 39%. I think I know that countries like Switzerland have like almost no tariffs, and Singapore. I think the European tariffs are like 4%. And like, where are these numbers coming from? I get offset and I start getting emails from the economists and the international trade experts I know. And they're like, what the heck are those numbers? And nobody really understood where those numbers came from. And I think David said like at 5:30 or so, somebody who was not in the international trade community because they couldn't understand it, started doing the math, and it is what Sarah was saying earlier. It's the trade deficit, half of the trade deficit divided by the imports. Now, let me show you a comment from the White House on where this came from. The White House official telling reporters yesterday, quote, I want to emphasize here that these tariffs are customized to each country, and the numbers have been calculated by the Council of Economic Advisors using very, very well-established methodologies from the international trade economic literature. So then I started calling international trade economic experts, and nobody ever heard of this formula. Nobody has ever used this formula. So I'm sorry, but the conclusion seems to be the president kind of made this up as he went along. He made up, and I think what Sarah was saying was interesting. There was an anticipation, okay, it was going to be reciprocal. These are off the charts and nowhere near what other countries charge us. And unfortunately, it makes us into one of the highest, maybe the highest tariff country in at least the developed world, a lot like a lot of sort of developing countries. One other estimate I got, guys, from the Tax Foundation, who's been studying this very closely as it's gone by along minute by minute. I just talked to Erica York. We'll have her on in the 1 o'clock show. She is reducing her estimate of imports by $900 billion, or nearly a third. Because these tariffs, if you look at the level of them, they're not like, oh, okay, this is an added cost. They're shut-off valve tariffs. They're tariffs that say you cannot import from these countries at 40 to 50%. So that's where we are right now. And you guys have been talking about all of the downgrades. I don't have a single forecaster saying, because of these tariffs, we are forecasting more U.S. growth, more employment, and lower inflation. Every forecaster is the opposite. Lower growth, higher inflation, less employment.
Steve, kind of fits anecdotally with what we mentioned yesterday about Mercedes pulling their lower-priced cars. And your point about cheap guitars this morning on Squawk points to the whole regressive nature of this entire policy.
Well, listen to what Phil said. Where are the inexpensive cars made? They are made overseas, and that provides an opportunity for lower-income Americans to buy cars that would be much more expensive. Guitars are a luxury. I get it. Maybe not for everybody, not myself, but for some people, they're a luxury. Cars are not. They're how you get to work. They're how you make your livelihood. And the extent to which they are talking about moving the tax system, like if these are tax cuts, they are de facto tax cuts for the wealthy, paid for by the poor, because they are terribly regressive taxes. Two reasons. One is that they end up paying, poor people buy the cheaper goods that are imported. And second of all, it's a bigger share of their income. Leave it there.
Steve, thank you. Steve Leisman.